Mobile apps, embedded apps, Internet of Things, the Internet of everything, Internet is everywhere, data, oh my goodness, it's all happening all the time. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to drill down a little bit on what's mobile, and what's needed to make these things actionable and make them work. You've seen a little bit of that this morning in our demo, but it's a lot more than just that. A couple big quotes, mobile, it's going to be huge. If you guys don't know yet that mobile is going to be huge, I think you're in the wrong room. I really do, okay? I'm sorry, but it's just the truth. Mobile is absolutely huge. An interesting one here, mobile phones, in particular one product, the Apple iPhone, represents in of itself, the Apple iPhone, a little $500 or $700 device, whatever it is, represents a 0.5 percentage point of the entire US economy. So think about that a little bit, right? The US economy, the biggest economy in the world, 1/2 that percentage point is dominated by a single product, the iPhone, a mobile device. And the iPhone, by the way, is only like 20% market share. Add in all the other phones, you can see this is a big, big business, okay? So there's a few more data points for you guys here, and it's not just mobile phones. It goes well beyond that, and we showed that a little bit this morning, and I'm going to throw out this quote a few more times, or this word a few more times, till Mark finally repeats it. Ready, Mark? Micro electromechanical systems, MEMS. MEMS are also everywhere. MEMS have been everywhere forever, right? Who here has a car that when you're driving and all of a sudden in the wintertime you get a little alert in your car that says low tire pressure? Well, where did that come from? That's pretty cool, right? That's a MEMS. There's this little sensor in your wheel. It's keeping track of everything, okay? And it goes far beyond that. Even before that, we had sensors in our car that would tell us high oil pressure, right? This is back in the 70s we had these sensors. And MEMS go beyond just that. They go into our wearables, Fitbit, Nike Fuel Band. I used to own a pair of running shoes. I had a little device right inside here, and I would run, and it would count my steps. It was pretty fun. All these things are sensors we have in the world, and now we got clothing that's going to soon tell us when to go stretch out and do other things, and, there's another MEM. This thing's got about 85 MEMs inside of it, right? They call it the motion processor. Apple likes to call it that. It knows how long I've been standing. It knows when I'm sleeping, or apparently. It's kind of freaky sometimes. Here's another MEM. My credit card. This has got an NFC chip built into it. This is also a sensor of some sorts. You could use it to track stuff. So the point here is that they're everywhere, and this industry is not going to slow down. And the deluge of data we're going to get from the Internet of Things, from the sensors everywhere in the world, is going to grow exponentially. Okay? Another common one. Who here has a Nest thermometer? One hand over there. I bought that thing right away, man. I saved like 30% of my energy bill. So happy I got that thing. That's another sensor that's just sitting there and tracking stuff for me. So we're designing for a mobile-free, wearable world now. Okay? Beforehand, we had paper. And then we moved to a screen. And then we moved to phones and tablets. And this morning, you've seen us moving to a watch. What's the next frontier? I'm saying it's going to be your car infotainment system. It's going to be more than just that. And Bert is well positioned to be in all these areas, right? Maybe one day I'll be able to walk up to my Nest thermometer and get a Bert report of my usage. Although I'm sure they already made their own reports, but it could happen. My fridge, it could tell me to get on a diet because I'm eating too many calories because I got a beautiful report that shows me I'm healthy. So it's getting there, and it's getting everywhere. And Bert is uniquely positioned to do this because of our ability to be embedded and the ability of the platform in itself. So one of the things about being mobile, it's about being able to recognize people and be relevant to what they're doing. It's very important to be relevant. And last year, if you came to our show, we talked a little bit about relevancy of providing you data. We were approached by a customer to do a proof of concept. We worked with them, and it went very well. Where essentially they implanted sensors inside the shopping cart. And as you walked around the store, they were tracking where you were at. You stopped, looked at some TVs, you didn't buy anything from TVs. checked out, put in your loyalty card. They now tied that store path to a human being, you. Realize you didn't buy TVs, but you stared at them for 20 minutes. Next week, TVs are going on sale. They're going to send you a very relevant ad about that. It's being relevant. And it's tracking who you are to do it, but you need to be even more proactively relevant. What you want to do is you want to say the person's been staring at those TVs for 20 minutes, you want to send an alert to their phone. Did you know that TV goes on sale, and if you buy now, we'll honor you that sale right now today? Why not, right? I know I would buy it. So relevancy is very important. Being able to proactively and at a timely manner deliver information to people. Keep them smart and connected. The problem, the other flip side of this, is with all these delivery mechanisms, you now have all kinds of different types of content you have to design, you have to do. And this could get daunting. You know, I got to design an app for a phone, I got to design an app for the desktop, I got to figure out how to make mailings to people still because there's people over here, and now we're talking about TVs or fridge screens and card systems, and oh my goodness. So being able to interact and reuse that content that we give to people allows us to be far more nimble in driving the Internet of Things and the delivery of this content everywhere to everybody in the world. So with interactivity, we have a less need to develop all these different permutations of the content. And we could reuse the content which promotes lower dev cycles for every app. And that's very important. Very important to get to the next level, if you will. So we don't want to make mobile just another delivery mechanism. We want to make it part of our ecosystem. And what we want to do is develop for all the delivery mechanisms and then farm out just the appropriate part that you need for that mechanism, be it a mobile screen or a desktop screen or a watch sometimes. And this is where some of the APIs we've been working on enable this at Actuate. So the iHub with our new REST API, we're not just treating BERT as a visual engine, we want to treat it as a data engine as well. We want to feed that content where it needs to be when it needs to be there. Another one is centralizing your alerts and your data. Being proactive about it as well. If all your data is centralized and you have it all in one spot, instead of putting it in 10 different systems, you're more capable of finding thresholds, spotting trends, and alerting about those trends in one spot. So, you know, previously I have all these delivery mechanisms, so I have to have 10 different data stores and application servers on the back end. The problem is now you have to manage 10 different alert mechanisms as well, and you might have some data in one system but not data in the other system, and now you got to correlate them together, and it's a mess, right? So you want to get everything centralized so you're able to spot those trends and make those alerts much more timely. So again, it feeds a need for a centralized system to control this mass of all these various devices that are going to be receiving our information. And being able to automate all this stuff so you can repeat it on a daily, monthly, even hourly cycle. Embedding. We just changed the color of Mark's watch. I still can't believe he expensed that darn thing. Is it useful, by the way, besides telling time and giving you your RPMs? Does it do anything else? You have to embed. You have to embed. That is key. It's so important now with everything out there. If your technology can't embed, you're not going to go anywhere. Actually, we've been embedding content since before BERT. Anybody here familiar with the term e-reports? I got one guy over there. Two. You guys are long-term Actuate people. You were able to embed e-reports back then as well. We actually white-labeled our product back then to be embedded. Yeah, you had to use iframes and a couple other weird tricks, but we made it so you could do that with it. And today, when we came up with BERT, one of the core focuses of our visualization platform for BERT was to embed it and to do it very easily. And in 2008, we finally came out with a great API to do that. We called the JavaScript API. And it allowed you to embed any visual onto anything out there that could process web. And luckily for us, web is a standard that's caught on very, very well. And all the devices out there in the world, they all do web in some form or another, which is good. So we're able to use these HTML and all related technologies and embed our content. And then we went one step further. We developed another API based on the same backbone, so you could get the data. So now we have an API for visuals. We have an API for data. You can marry them together. They share authentication information. It's great. Embedding is very important. So at Actuate, our vision really is about mobile and embedded analytics. It provides a better engagement. Now, the use case we did this morning was a little, pie in the sky. When we talked to Sean about it, he was like, wow, I'm ready to do something very similar to that, to be proactive about it. He does fleet management. LA County has got a lot of vehicles out there in the world, and sometimes the employees beat up on them a little bit, if you will. And it's good to be able to track that and understand that it's getting a specific type of abuse. And you could bring it in for maintenance a little earlier. Maybe send out an alert to the person saying, hey, stop that. Whatever. Fire him? I don't know. But being able to do this and being able to do it anywhere I am. As a fleet manager, I can't always be sitting behind my desk. I need to be out there in the field sometimes. So I need to be able to have this embedded on the device that I'm carrying with me at the time. And it's very important to be able to do that. And we do so, of course, through the various APIs we provide. So we want to support any platform, and we can get to any data. We've got an API for that one as well. We've been securing our content all the time across APIs. And if you get one token on one API, you could use it in the other APIs. That's something I wanted to stress here. It's very important about that. Our APIs are aware of each other. You got to put it in the right format. And Bird is nimble like that. It's capable of doing that with its libraries and its reusable components. You can do these kinds of things. And if you provide interaction with that content in a way for users to trigger events or to plug into other libraries, you could allow them to interact and take action with that content. We didn't mention it this morning, but Actuate is also releasing with iHub 3.1 a component we call the third-party data visualization. This will allow you to essentially use BERT to drive data on a visualization that we don't ship with. And it doesn't just have to be a visualization. It could be hooked into another application's ability to add data or to interact with their content. It could be anything that is web-based. And we could data drive that interaction, that embeddability with it right inside the BERT report. And if that component is visual, we'll even server-side render it if you need to put it on PDF. Okay, we're capable of doing that as well. It's a very cool little component. And maybe people didn't catch it, but those little cool charts and dials that you see going on live, the initial view was driven by BERT, and then it was fed data live in real time. That was designed using those components this morning. It's a new plugin we will be shipping with iHub 3.1. So when we talk about mobile deployment, there's really 4 types of mobile applications: native, hybrid, completely mobile, and the native hybrid. The top 2, right? Native and the mobile. They are really complete dichotomies of each other. And when it comes to mobile development, one's very fast, smooth, costs a lot of money to develop on. You can't port to other platforms. Very specific. The other one, platform independent, could go anywhere with it with a few tweaks. You develop the component once, you reuse it everywhere. It's easier to maintain in that aspect, but it's not as fluid, it's not as fast, it's not as performant because it sits far up higher on the mobile's architecture. And then we have the hybrid, which really just uses a native skin to maybe control authentication, but the content of the app is all web-based still. So the only real native you get out of that is just maybe so you could put it on the App Store or whatever it is. And those are very popular. Hybrid apps are very popular out there in the world. Marriott's app is a hybrid app. If anybody goes and travels a lot like I do, you might use a Marriott app. We're in a Marriott hotel. That's a hybrid app. And then the bottom right one. That's the one we want people to go to. This gives you the best of all the worlds. It allows you to make a native application that's high performant where it needs to be performant, but where it doesn't need to be performant and where you don't want to spend all the time on maintenance and coding and everything else, you could go with a visual design that could be ported to all the platforms. So you could combine the two. And I've been preaching this for a long time with people. Please don't go way over here or way over there. The best answer is always somewhere in the middle. And you need to find that right equilibrium to make it happen. We at Actuate, obviously we do that. The app I showed this morning was exactly that model. There's a lot of parts that were native, some of the visuals were even native, and a lot of parts that were not native. And we combined it all together into one fluid experience. So when you're developing mobile applications with BERT, there's a lot of just putting the data out there. You probably have data from multiple sources. I can promise you have data from multiple sources. One of the beauties of being able to have these mobile phones is that we know we're getting data from multiple areas fed into our device. And then you got the problem of single sign-on. If I have to log in every time I pull up that mobile app, I can promise you in a couple of weeks, I'm just going to get a hard press and I'm going to hit the X right next to it. It's just annoying. It really, unless you are a financial application, I do not want to be prompted to log in each time. It's very annoying. But you have to manage that. You have to make sure that that single sign-on session, that user session is properly taken care of as well. And of course, you want to personalize the delivery of the content. So you need to know who the user is and make sure the content they get is just for them. And you want to make it interactive. If all you give is me a chart and I can't do anything with that chart, or just a table of data, who cares? The app will get very little usage. And the app, the more real time you get, the better. People live in a very fast-paced Facebook, Twitter world nowadays where they know that, the voting results before turning on CNN or whatever it is. It's so fast now, we don't have to go anywhere. We know what's going on with the world immediately. And of course, you want to be able to push this information back to the server if you have to, where appropriate. We're doing more in that area with BERT as well to help facilitate those. So how does this kind of look in an architecture? Well, you see there in the middle, it's still the iHub. Beforehand, we used to always put up a screen like this, but the things on the left-hand side were desktops and maybe a piece of paper. We replaced all those with watches and iPhones and tablets and Android phones. Even a Windows phone, if they still existed. I don't know if they still make those things. Do they? Dan's got one. Is Dan here today? Too bad. I could make fun of him. Another point that's important here is that different devices expect different types of visual content. A watch, for example, this little tiny itty-bitty screen. You're not going to put much more than a pie chart in that thing, promise you. Although I think the circle face is really suitable for a pie. You'd probably get a number on there. That makes sense. Do an alert. That makes sense. My phone. I remember we had some people say, yeah, I need you to develop a dashboard for my phone. They wanted to put like 6 charts on their phone. I just kind of looked at them. You're going to have little tiny charts like, come on, man. Right? The content for your phone needs to be different. If it's more than a single chart wide, it's not going to work. A tablet, you could probably get side by side on that. One thing a lot of people don't recognize is that on a screen, your desktop screen, now we're running these 1920 high-def displays, you're using a mouse to work around that thing. Your mouse has got a precision of about 3 pixels. Your finger, 45. So your finger is about 15 times less precise than your mouse. And you're using a screen which is 1/4 the size of your desktop. So now think about what kind of precision and how you're going to develop that content just for it. Okay? There are things to consider when you do that. With the BERT data objects and our ability to kind of cache that data and provide high-speed data, you can develop the content with BERT. You could use what's appropriate, and we could auto-scale it as well. We do have ways to change the size of those charts, make things happen based on the delivery mechanism itself. Okay? And of course, we're going to secure it. And with mobile, another thing that people are missing is now you have 1 million people hitting your site all the time, so you need a platform that could scale. Scale, scale, and scale is very important in this world. So what about wearables and beyond that? What's next? What's coming after we wear our devices? You know, I have heard about Mark sent me a link about shirts now that track my motion or stuff like that. Apparently you plug them in somehow, maybe through Bluetooth, and they download your data. I mean, like, this is an Under Armour shirt that you could buy that figures out how fit I'm being? That's awesome. Sign me up. So, you know, the watch icon here is not a mistake, obviously. We wanted to show off that watch, and when we built the slide deck, we actually didn't even have the watch demo working yet. We were just thinking about how to make it happen. But what about more sensors coming out there in the world? You know, we have data coming from everywhere. This is, I think it's some kind of weird Formula One car. Do you know how many sensors are in a Formula One car? I did a plane trip before with a guy sitting next to me who was from the Honda F1 team. He was one of the engine guys. And he pulls out his laptop and he starts analyzing all this data. And I mean, there was so many charts and data points on that thing. It was for 5 seconds worth. And it blew me away. There was maybe 1 million data points for 5 seconds of content. And it was just like, wow. That means that was like the lap 3 going around turn 2. And that's what he was analyzing because they lost a lot of ground in that turn. They wanted to figure out what happened. Very cool stuff. So it's getting much more expanded is the point here. And it's not just going to be your wearables. It's already in your cars, but it's expanding beyond that. It's definitely expanding beyond that. You know, one of the things I wanted to talk about and you know, what's next? Surfers. We're in the West Coast. A lot of surfers out here. Maybe one of you guys are a surfer. We already get buoy data, wind data, and everything else tells you about when the waves are going to be big. But are the waves rideable? What if they started putting sensors inside of surfboards and we started crowd surfing that data? Then we know what people are doing with those waves. So maybe the wave's big, but it was really choppy that day and the rides weren't great. Maybe another day the waves are a little smaller, but now people are pulling all these aerobatic tricks on it, doing all kinds of fun. So it's a much better day of riding. But if you crowdsource this data, you can understand that more. Now, who would have thought of putting a sensor in a surfboard? Right? These things are coming. Who would have thought of putting a sensor in my shoe? 10 years ago, that was unheard of. Now it's everywhere. And Gartner said, you know, the internet is expanding well beyond PCs, mobile devices, and even the field equipment, right? Even the sensors that we have out there in manufacturing plants, going way beyond that. And this explosion of data is massive. So that's the challenge to us, is trying to capture the next one and making sure we're on top of it at all times. So this morning I promised you guys I would dive into detail of how we pulled this off, and I'm going to do that right now. So our engineer in Kansas, every car built since 1994 or something like that in North America has to have something we call the OBD2 sensor port. It allows you to get diagnostics information about your vehicle. That check engine light, you know, you bring the car to the shop, the guy plugs in, or maybe an AutoZone, he does a couple of things, tells you exactly what's going on. He plugs into the OBD2 port. It's a serial interface for a car. It allows you to gather all kinds of telemetrics about the vehicle. And of course, people out there in geek world have said, hey, let's create a little dongle for it. You plug it in. It's a standard plug. And then we'll Bluetooth that data to our app. So you buy the dongle for your $25, whatever it costs. You get an Android phone, you sit on your dash, and it Bluetooths the information on your Android phone. Your Android phone just acts as a data collector. Maybe even has a little interface to show you what you've collected in data. And then what we did is we then put an MQTT broker. That's the message queuing, I forgot what TT stands for, but it allows you to do real-time tracking of data. So we were feeding the data from the phone over the internet to this MQTT broker in real time because we're getting way more data than the phone could store. And that's getting stored in MQTT. And then we put iHub right after that. And it would pull data from that broker. And in some cases, we would use a JavaScript library. In other cases, we use a Java library, depending on the application. If it was the watch, it was a Java library. Some of the charts were using JavaScript library. But everything was coming from the iHub. And then we went ahead and delivered it to a screen, a phone, and the watch. And for those of you wondering, there is also another trick that Samsung did with their Gear and their phone, is that you could do a Bluetooth connection between the two of them, and you could essentially launch an action. So if a threshold is triggered on the watch, you can interact with that threshold and launch a detail onto your phone. And that's really how we pulled off that feat. Now, you may have heard that we were up late that night. One of the biggest problems with Bluetooth connectivity with these darn things. We realized that if you separate these things too far apart, you're going to be spending the next 20 minutes of reconnecting them. So that's why Mark is now walking around everywhere with a phone in his pocket and a wrist around his and a watch around his wrist. You know, sometimes things, you know, you can't predict what you don't know, and this is a new thing to us, and we were playing with it. But this type of thing isn't something special for BERT. So getting data out of MQTT, that was just another data adapter for us. So we used one of our APIs for that. Putting the data onto a watch, we use our REST API for that. And visualizing the data on the phone, we use our JavaScript API for that one. So we use 3 different APIs to do that. Oh, and by the way, we had to authenticate too while we were in that process. Make sure you are who you say you are. So this is all done, you know, the sensors were the sensor technology. The delivery of the data and the visuals was done in BERT, and the output was just more phones, more output devices out there. And this was just some guy's project because he was a geek. He just wanted to see how much data he could get out of his Prius, and he just was having fun with it. We said, hey, now that you got all this data, why don't you visualize it? You do work for a data visualization company after all. And it was pretty fun stuff. Great project to work with them. I'm sorry, what was that? Yeah, well, what you saw in the morning, we did not show you real-time data. We did not have a guy in a parking lot driving around, okay? Although that would be really cool. In the world of demos, you have to pull the stops here and there and make sure it's going to work, okay? However, we did have it running real-time at one point in time. So we know that works. Yeah, it is live data. So what we did is we collected all the data, and then we stored it in a database. And then we slapped the MQTT output broker on that database, and it would loop through the data and feed it into the charts. So the guy did, that was how long was that drive about? 15 minutes or something like that? And then we would loop through it, okay? So that's basically what it was. And that's how we could do the demo this morning. In a real world scenario though, you would have the data fed via the internet into a cloud server out there in the world and feed that right back into your reports. But you know, like I said, for a demo, sometimes you gotta limit what you're doing for variability. Like, what if you got in a car accident? We wouldn't get any data. What if the security guard came up there and says, what are you doing, man? You're just driving around in circles, right? Or what if we're doing this show in New York like we'll be doing in a month? You ain't driving around in New York, I promise you that. Okay, it just doesn't happen. Even New Yorkers don't own cars. So to kind of wrap it all up, and I told you guys it's going to be short, right? I'm not taking up the whole hour. When it comes to the Internet of Things, there's 3 very important keywords here, and they're pretty darn bold, and the rest of them are not irrelevant either. You need to embed. You need to automate this by merging all the sources into one store so you can get those automation done properly. And you need to be able to provide interactivity and reuse. Very important to do those 3 things in order to provide deployment to mobile, to capture data, and to give something that works for people. Okay? And of all those, you know, data access, I believe, is one of the most important ones of it. And the other one is being able to provide a set of APIs and developer tools so they can easily and quickly develop this content and deploy it to not just one, but a multitude of devices without having to reinvent the wheel every single time. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be able to write a report for a watch and it works everywhere. But if you're able to reuse some aspect of that, like maybe the data layer, that's some reusability. That makes you get to the next step quicker, okay? If you're able to take that chart you put on your dashboard and reuse that exact same chart with maybe a different size on your tablet, you've succeeded in some form of reusability. And that's very important to be able to pull this off. Standards are very important in this world as well. Our industry is very much focused on working against standards. IE6. Who here has lost at least 10 nights to IE6? Okay, that's because they didn't use standards. And the whole industry jumped on it because they shipped it with Windows. And man, was that a rough time, right? Standards are important. When you develop something, please make sure you adhere to them so you can reuse that in the future. So you won't be cringing your teeth when or the next person won't be cringing their teeth when you leave and he has to pick it up or they don't figure out what it was because it didn't make sense. Any questions? Who wants a cocktail?